Welcome back to Rooted in the Caribbean, our Women in Leadership series. Today, my guest is Anjen Mc Lean. Anjan is a dear friend. We've known each other for the past 25 years, and her career has spanned that period as well, or longer actually, because she started her career in Nestle in Trinidad and has since moved on to large organizations like Shell Trading, JP Morgan, and the Massy Group. Anjan is an executive leader with experience in risk management, business transformation, and organizational resilience. Originally from Trinidad, she's built an international career spanning the Caribbean, the UK, and now Canada. And throughout her journey, she's held leadership roles in brand management and risk management. Currently based in Winnipeg, Anjen has cultivated a diverse professional portfolio as a board director, executive instructor, business coach, and consultant. She is passionate about guiding organizations and individuals through complex challenges, blending strategic insight with deep empathy to drive sustainable success. Her expertise spans enterprise risk management, business continuity, change management, governance, policy development, and sustainability. Beyond her professional endeavors, Anjan enjoys an active lifestyle with her two teenage children and spends loads of time outdoors hiking and running. Please help me welcome Anjen Mc Lean. Hello, welcome to Rooted in the Caribbean, our Women in Leadership series. And today, my guest is Anjen Mc Lean. And I've known Anjen, I just did the math, for 25 years.
Yeah, 25.
And so it is an absolute pleasure to have her here to talk through her leadership journey as a woman, as a woman. Um, so Anjan, tell us about your Caribbean roots.
First of all, thank you, Dominique. And as I said, you are the only one that can get me to even speak about this. Anyone who knows me knows that I like to stay in the background. Um, but when you reached out because of our connection, because of the journey we've been through together, I had to say yes. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much. My Caribbean roots, it's not something I think a lot about because I have lived in so many countries. I am originally from Trinidad and Tobago. I grew up there, I went to school there, but I always had an outward looking perspective. I think my first taste of that was when I went to France. I loved languages, French and Spanish, and I've always been outward looking. So I never really think about my Caribbean roots. Um, my Caribbean roots, of course, I was born and grew up in the Caribbean. But when I think about Caribbean roots, I think about my education.
Yeah.
Going to Holy Name Convent with a very strong Catholic foundation, but I wasn't Catholic. Going to a school which is known or has a reputation for privilege, but I met people from many background,
Yeah.
different classes, and I still have friendships from people who went to school. So Caribbean roots for me means the kind of education I had that has prepared me to be
Yeah.
outward looking.
Yeah.
Um, it is also about values,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I mean, the Caribbean countries have a strong matriarchal societies.
Heritage. Yeah.
Heritage, the mother is supreme in the home, and multi-generational families, grandparents, aunts, and so it's that fiber, that network. So for me, Caribbean roots is about education and values, and I have taken that with me.
Yeah.
So the importance of having extended family and supporting them as I move to different places is something I've taken with me as
Thank you.
well. So I guess that when I think about that question, it's a little bit different to what you would think of in terms of the music and the culture and food, and all of
Mm,
that is important as well.
yeah, but for you, education was the foundation.
Yes, and the value we put on education, but also the
Yeah,
kind of educational structures that we have in the Caribbean, even going to the University of the West Indies.
yeah.
I think it's this idea of always punching above your weight. That's what
Hmm.
Caribbean roots are, strong foundations, but also striving
Yeah.
um, to do more than is expected, to surprise.
And you mentioned your school, your secondary school, and that was an all-girls school.
It was an
Do you
all-girls
think
school.
that had any influence at all in terms of the roots that you're referencing?
Yes. Um, all girls education, I think, gave me a safe space to be. I didn't have to be told, well, you can do anything as good as the boys.
Mhm.
That was just not even in the equation. So it was a
Yeah,
safe space to just be and explore without the constraints of thinking about gender,
yeah,
even as a limiting factor. And as I look back, I remember a lot of girls who were musicians, artists, scientists, journalists, and it just normalized success, much in the same way I raised my kids. My kids were born in the UK, but I made a conscious decision that they should have a Caribbean childhood because I
yeah,
didn't want to have to explain or to say, you can be as good as XYZ.
yeah,
They grew up without even having that um, parameter shown to them. They
yeah.
just tried to
There
explore.
were no limits.
There were no limits. They weren't even conscious that this was a limiting factor.
Yeah.
Now that we live in another country, they can just thrive because the foundation was one where, I don't know, this it's almost like a seed growing in a pot versus a seed growing in just an open field. You're not even
Field.
aware of the boundaries.
Got you. And do you think, or how would you describe the roots that you reference? How have you brought those Caribbean roots, the values, into your leadership journey as a woman?
So those are two things to unpick. So I think it's first as a woman.
Hmm.
And, I won't sugarcoat it. Being a woman leader is difficult, it's complex.
Yeah.
Um, in spite of all the gains that women have made,
Mm.
we're not there yet. The pay gap still exists. We
Yeah.
still, and both of us have worked in many corporate environments
Yeah.
where the path to leadership is a little bit gray for women leaders.
Hmm.
You're never quite sure that you're doing enough. And then you
Yeah.
may look at male counterparts and realize that, well, they do less and achieve more. That's still a reality as a woman. So I think being a woman, female leader is still tough. It's still complex. We're still navigating. It's still an evolution. The layer that being that having those Caribbean roots brings, I think it's both positive and negative. As I mentioned, we come from matriarchal societies, and in the home, we just get things done. And many of our homes are single parent, but even when it's
Yeah.
not single parent, we just have a lot more duties. And because
Yeah.
it's multi-generational, we're taking care of immediate family, grandparents who are sick,
Hmm.
and we're
Extended.
juggling a lot. And that
Hmm.
comes into, as leaders, into the workspace where we're not in charge. So the reverse, it's very male dominated. And from a Caribbean background, we still have issues where how you look as a woman is probably more important, how you're judged before you start to act.
Yeah.
And so that complexity is enriched, I think, because we come with an ability and a confidence to know that we can get things done. And at the same time, where we are operating in a space where um, the rules and the reality, Caribbean reality that has shaped us, um, means that we're battling themes that may not allow us to show up with all the strength we know we can bring.
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
to package it in a way that
You
we
kind
can
of you kind
still
of reel
tell.
it back a bit. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And it's a dance.
Yeah.
It is a dance. So I think that's the reality that you're playing with. And for me, having worked as an executive in the Caribbean as well as in other countries,
Territory.
developing and developed countries, it's something I carry with me because, as you said,
Mm,
that's my Caribbean roots. So I
yeah.
bring that with me, even if the norms outside and the context outside is different. Where I see that's a benefit is that my antenna or my sensitivity to some of
Mm-hmm.
these subtleties is probably heightened, so I
Yeah.
can spot it um,
A mile away.
quicker. Even when
Mm,
it's subtle in the environment, I can
yeah.
recognize it and shift. Um, Here where I'm based, and so either in the UK or in Canada, diversity is a big issue. But I have to confess,
So
I'm a
it's
bit
an additional complexity.
well, it's not for me because I grew up with it because of Caribbean roots. So it's almost like the world has woken up to this and how to navigate this, and it's like this isn't even a thing.
That's been
It's
your reality.
always been the reality and seen as something to be embraced.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's where it has helped me to navigate whatever country I go to. The
Mm,
question that when I see diversity is very normal. It's been normalized for me.
yeah.
And I think that is an advantage. And it's diversity also in thought. I think we get caught up a lot in diversity from, the visible
And
diversities,
yeah.
gender and race. And for me, it's really important to have diversity of thought, which comes from recognizing that people who come from different cultures have different perspectives
Yeah.
that
How is that? How is that showing up for you in the boardroom?
to be quite honest, in the boardroom, I don't. So this goes back to the being a matriarch in the home, but
Mm,
in the office space, you have to battle to be heard. And I think in the boardroom, that's a space where it's hardest to navigate because there are many social norms that are male dominated. Do
yeah.
you speak up? Or
Mm,
are you because you are the one person or the two people on a board?
mm, yeah.
And that's not just in the Caribbean, but I think across the board. So
Yeah.
when you come with you're the only female or the minority female and you are from the Caribbean, so you already have an exotic label. It's to how do you push through so that you are seen for yourself and what you
Yeah.
bring independent of that. Those, your roots and your background may shape the sound of the voice, but the message
The
is
content.
rooted in me, my identity, who I am, independent of
Yeah.
all that. The ideas I bring, my experience from my
Mm,
professional background, I want that to be heard first. And so I think being in the boardroom, it is very difficult. The challenge is to make sure that that does not get in the way of the message.
yeah.
Then, if it can enhance the message. But then, as a woman, I need to know when I need to turn up that dial and turn it back to make sure that my message is heard.
Yeah. And that's not just heard, but accepted. Because I work with teams now, and they will tell you that one of the things I said to them very early on is, that old adage that you can capture more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Yeah, I still
Um,
use it.
yeah, just because you want to take people on a journey with you. You don't just want it to land. And they may recognize that what you're saying is true, is correct, it's the best course of action. But how do you take them on that journey with you? And that's what you were describing, that I think is that nuanced thing that we need to do as female leaders that
Yeah,
men never have to worry about.
I think they don't have to worry about. I think the fact that they don't worry about it causes challenges. I think as
Mm.
female leaders, it's to help them. So there's a voice of advocacy where you do need to push forward. But bringing them along in the journey is actually to get them to recognize. And maybe sometimes it's for them to say one of the realizations for me that has made me successful is to focus on just getting the outcome, getting the impact. But if
Yeah.
somebody says, if I have been so successful in getting that advocacy or getting that sponsorship that someone else says, we really need risk management because risk management is my background. I've
Mm.
won. I don't
Yeah.
need to be the person that says
That they
really
utilize. Yeah.
mismanaged. But if through my advocacy, either
Hmm.
strong or soft, either in front or in the background,
Yeah.
and it gets done, I've won. For me,
Mm.
and my concept of what strong leadership is really has
Hmm.
come to this point. Leadership is to act in a way that you have empowered someone to come along on the journey with you to
Yeah.
that destination where you think we all benefit.
Mm. Even if someone else has, let's just call it the credit for achieving it, or yeah.
If you focus on the objective of getting to destination,
Yeah.
does it matter if the driver says I drove you or that
Mm.
if your objective is on getting to the destination,
Yeah, it doesn't matter who's driving.
it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
that makes
Either you are given the directions to make sure they follow and they don't get lost and they avoid the
yeah,
potholes, or sometimes you take over the driving wheel. But
yeah.
it's to shift that perspective on the destination, which I think brings
That's
more
really
satisfaction
profound.
to everybody.
Yeah,
And it's more sustainable. And I think this is one of the things that I'm hoping we don't lose sight of.
yeah. That is a really, for me, that's a really unique perspective on leadership, especially as women. I mean, we might want to say that we're better navigators than others, but it's up for argument. But it's a really unique perspective because if you are focused on the end result, and we know as leaders that you have to work through others. So if, as you've described it, the finish line is the destination, who's driving us there shouldn't matter as long as we're all playing our parts to get there. Anjan, what would you describe as your defining moment as a woman in leadership?
Oh, why? A defining moment for me is, I don't think it was a moment, it was a process, Dominique.
Okay.
It was a culmination. And I think it was a sort of 3-year period. I think probably the most difficult for me professionally and personally. I had a lot of challenges. And it was to realize that by doubling down on my values
Hmm.
and pushing through, I came out with a sense, and for me, that's the definition, the defining moment, that sense, that
Mm.
realization that I am enough.
Right.
I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And I think the latter was probably the hardest because it can feel pretty lonely
Mm.
sometimes,
Yeah.
um, as a female leader.
Hmm.
And it was to recognize if you are true to your values and you surround yourself with people who are giving you positivity, and in those dark moments, those are the people who actually reinforce what they see in you,
Yeah.
that you are so in that gray fog that you can't see it yourself.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's when you realize it might feel lonely, but there are others around if you have, again, that mantra I've said, which is focus on that destination.
Destination.
There
Yeah.
you have a group of people who sustain you
Mm.
and it has, coming out of that period, that validated my
Mm.
values, that validated that. It helped me to double down even more and to commit even more to this type of leadership, one that's focused on curiosity,
Mhm.
sustainability. And these are things that I think the great management gurus they talk about, but we don't practice.
Yeah.
We chase and as things change so much, digitization, automation, option and AI and all these things.
Mm.
Actually, a lot of this change means that as human beings, we have to actually double down on values. We have to double
What's
down on
yeah.
sustainability because the current changes are so fast and so furious, you can be swept away. So you do need to have that focus on something that is durable. And to do that requires a leadership style that is more collaborative, a leadership style that brings curiosity, energy, and maybe some of those things going back to Caribbean roots.
Hmm.
If I'm working on a project, I have to remind myself this has to be fun. And nobody knows how to do fun better, I'm sorry, than
Right.
Caribbean people. And you know when you're working really hard on something, it
Yeah.
seeps out. When that pressure builds, there's something in you that's going to say, hey, okay, the pressure cooker, we need to let it out a bit.
But
Yeah, because you want to be there for the long run. You want
yeah.
to have a sustainable goal. So there's that balance. There is
Yeah.
that balance, that commitment to drive and be the best, etc. But at the same time, taking care of others,
Yeah.
making sure the team that you're not leaving someone behind.
Got you. And when you think about the world of leadership, what do you want to be different for your daughter, for Gabby, or for, your niece or in the
Yeah.
future? What do you hope would have changed?
In the same way I said that growing up in the Caribbean helped to make those boundaries disappear. I was not even aware of them.
Hmm.
I would like Gabriella to have an even bigger space
Right.
to play with.
Yeah.
And and I see that, maybe some of the things that I would be concerned about. My daughter Gabriella plays tennis, very competitive individual sport. And sometimes she plays at this age with boys as well as
Hmm.
with girls. And I do realize that through that sport, her idea of competition and the best, it's not gender biased.
Hmm.
So it's almost that, and so she can be free to win the game, focusing on skills
Yeah.
and dedication
Balance.
and focus and talent to be the best tennis player within the boundaries of her capabilities.
Mm.
I would like that for her in life.
Yeah.
That wherever she goes. So she has that Caribbean roots from me, but she's also a different person and I think she's probably more of a global creature. So she was born in the UK, lived in Barbados, lived in
In
Trinidad.
Trinidad.
She says, Mommy, things always happen to me. So she's going to be a global citizen. And of course, through me, she will have Caribbean roots. I hope her playing field is even broader because of what I have given her, the perspectives that I bring. Um, Free to be herself.
Yeah. No limitations.
No limitations that as she thinks it, she can do it, but she can do that in a way that still has the values that I have taught her. To
Yeah.
still focus on sustainability, to still focus on doing right
Creativity.
and doing the right thing and bringing
Mm.
all her creativity and all of herself. And
To the
I'm just,
table.
yeah, for me, I'm just curious to see what it brings. And I'm hoping that I have a lot of optimism when I think about the potential that our next generation has to make the world better. and to
Yeah.
push things forward.
What would you like your legacy to be as a woman in leadership? If we're looking back on this interview 5 years from now, you know, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be remembered for as a woman in leadership?
That's such a heavy question. Tell me my legacy to be. I'll give you, I see hints of it now in terms of what validates me or what gives me
Right,
encouragement. Currently I teach a lot and I want to make sure that when I teach, my audience gets an experience of me that's authentic. But
right.
that's not my real objective. My
Mm,
objective is that they walk away with something that they can use to advance themselves,
got you.
that they benefit beyond the time they are with me and I've done a great job, but I've done it in a way that they're taking something away where they can benefit. And as I look back on my career, I always feel satisfaction when someone I'm working with advances and
Hmm.
progresses.
Yeah,
Someone says, what you shared with me, what you taught me made me better.
yeah,
If I can continue to do that, if I can continue to have that impact
yeah.
based on
You
not just what I
made
bring in
it
terms
better.
of knowledge, but how people experience me.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked a lot about this. You can be the best, competent, etc.
Mm.
But if people can experience you in a way that says that they tell you what your value is
Yes.
because of how they experience it, for me, that's success. That's a legacy. So it's something you actively mine. It's not that you look back, but other people will tell you what it is. So
Yeah.
when I get validation like that, I say, yeah, the building blocks, like legacy is almost like a building blocks. I am continuing to build the block up
Yeah.
and not something that I have to look back and say, did I do it? No, I want validation. Am I building it?
Yeah.
Am I being true to what I hold there? Am I showing
Yeah.
up? That's legacy building.
I will add, having known you for as long as I have, that I've seen you really uh, be a trailblazer. Just carve a path. No,
Really?
I remember you working. It was close to St. Paul's, but it was in central London,
Yeah.
and it would just be corridors and corridors of men, and you were
That's
like the
fair.
only woman, just you know.
The only woman.
It was phenomenal to watch, to observe, as someone like I would come across to meet for lunch, and I would just be in awe of these people just kind of hanging on your every word. And yeah, before people were, I think, talking about the value of unicorns, you were
I
that
think you
in
exaggerate.
that world.
You exaggerate a bit.
No,
It's,
it was phenomenal to look at. Yeah, it always, I think that stuck with me because and often when young people ask about, what did it take for you to become successful at X or Y, they they don't get to see the real grind, the things that you have to do, standing in the cold, waiting on
that's true.
buses or
That I remember.
oh my God, feeling like your air would freeze off or
Yeah.
something. But those things were linked, as you said, to
Yes,
that foundational
that's
root
true.
of that resilience,
Yeah.
that
In Caribbean
un.
parlance, it's bad mind.
Mhm. So
It's
you're just not willing to give up.
no, yeah, no, and I think that's one of the elements of Caribbean roots. I'm glad you brought that up. We and female leaders from the Caribbean, we do have a generous portion of bad mind. Someone said, I love it when someone underestimates me. And I think we carry that with us.
Yeah. Or tells me that I'm not capable of doing something.
Yeah.
And then that's what are you talking about?
Yeah,
Of course
that
I
is a
am.
red flag to me. I love it. You try to put me in a box.
Mm,
That for me, it's like a red flag, a ringing bell to
yeah.
double down, and I will show you.
Don't
Yeah,
underestimate a
yeah.
Caribbean woman. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, so I think sometimes one of the things you said that is very true, and we've talked about this before. As women in general, we are, as you've described it, because we are so used to juggling multiple balls and kind of holding everyone,
Yes,
safe.
that's right.
Um, we're comfortable taking that back seat and letting whoever needs
Absolutely.
to take, yeah,
Yeah,
observe, and whoever needs to take the 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 limelight.
yeah.
Um, but I'm really, really, really grateful that you've been able to share your insight, because it's been eye-opening for me, and I know it will be for others as well. Um, and I guess the last thing I wanted to ask was if you could describe what you see as the most effective leadership traits for a woman in 3 words. What would those be?
Curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
sharing. I do think that we are so caught up in trying to be strong that we don't tap into each other enough.
Mm.
When we do, it replenishes us. So sharing, I really want to encourage us and myself to share more. And bad mind.
Well, I'll make sure I put a definition for bad mind for anybody who
It's
doesn't
that
know what it is.
stubborn, relentless belief that committed, it's focus on the objective and not on self.
Yeah,
Because if you focus on, I will do this, that can, suck you in. If you
yeah,
focus on this will get done by hook or by crook,
by
I
crook.
don't know how.
Yeah,
And that's where that curiosity, that creativity that gets drawn and this will get done is really being laser focused on the end goal.
yeah. And
That
it energizes you rather than drains you.
it energizes because it forces you. And I think it goes back to what you said. Even if I am not the one standing in front, it will get done. If I have
Hmm.
to stand behind, on top, below, if I have to push someone forward, it will get
Yeah,
done. That's for me really what that bad mind is. I'm going to bring all of myself, all of my resources, all of my creativity to ensure that this objective gets achieved.
yeah.
And that is a superpower.
I never thought of it in that way, so thank you.
This
And
has been a lot of fun.
and to your second point about sharing, that's what this is all about.
Yeah,
That we learn from each other. Because I think there are too many hidden gems just that we haven't brought to the fore. So I'm really, really grateful for
I am
all
great.
that you've shared.
I I've received so much in this sharing, and thank you. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you, Anjan.